Geico's motorcycle expertise gives me the coverage I need, like 24/7 claims. I'm on cloud 9.
Disclaimer, clouds are wholly unable to support the weight of an adult human.
What's happening?
Furthermore, clouds are not numbered. Even if you procured a jetpack and searched, you'd find no cloud numbered 9. However, at that altitude, you'd likely befriend a flock of migrating snow geese.
Geese?
Who'd encourage you to leave your 24/7 Geico motorcycle claims insurance behind, as they would take you in and even share their dinner of crickets and clovers with you.
Ew.
Geico assumes no liability for any indigestion that may occur from a clover cricket dinner. Geico. Expertise for your motorcycle.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm their host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we'll be talking about family dynamics in terms of the black sheep, a.k.a. the scapegoat, versus the golden child, and how that impacts us and how that actually comes to pass, and some of the things that can change and augment over the years as we age and get older, and how that works out in the process. And it's interesting, the concept of the black sheep and the concept of the golden child and the parent dynamic that creates this type of structure, power dynamic, and how that actually plays out. And it's interesting how these parents create this dynamic. They separate siblings from one another. They manipulate and separate because they believe that one child has the potential of being successful and having everything they want and being able to say, hey, this is my amazing kid. And they get behind that kid and they praise and they do all these things and they go out of their way to take care of them and, doing all the things around the house for them where they don't have to lift a finger, whereas the other siblings don't have the same life in the same family dynamic. And some can be in the middle. They're not the golden child, but they're not the black sheep. And so you have some of those kids that are just kind of the middle. They're not the supposedly going to be the next success story, nor are they the worst one, but yet they're in the middle. They get a little bit of attention, but not a lot. And then you have the child that has been deemed as the black sheep or the scapegoat. And that is an interesting dynamic. And when we walk through that, at the time, it's not like that you're the black sheep or the scapegoat. It's not that you're the chosen golden child. And the impact that has on your life is very interesting because even though the black sheep doesn't really know they're the black sheep, they just know that they have to seem to do everything for themselves, that they have to be scrappy, they got to get things done, they have to be resourceful. Their laundry is not going to be done by their mother. These things that they have to do have to be done. They have to get their homework done. They don't get special treatment. And then you see someone else in the family dynamic that seems to be getting special treatment. They seem to, have things done for them. They seem to be kind of the center of attention. And it's interesting because there's no names for it. There's no definitions, when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, to know what's really going on. However, as the years progress, so does the resentment. As the years progress, so does the division. The division between the black sheep and the golden child. And as the years progress, the things that the golden child gets to do is significantly more interesting than the other children. And it's interesting because the dynamic is created by parents who are thinking more about themselves, more self-centered, more about self, more about defining their kids, hoping that their kids have this amazing life to make them look better, to make them look good. This is my son, he's, the head of ESPN, or this is my daughter, she's on the, the cutting line of finding the cure for breast cancer or whatever. Or this is my son. He's a billionaire. He made all this money in cryptocurrency. He's a genius. Whatever that is, it's the title, it's the money, it's the success. It's all that because it makes them look good. And it's interesting how they make these, definitions and defining factors. Back in the day, it's like, how did you pick this kid to be like the hero, the golden child, and this kid to be the idiot? How does that work? How did you figure that out? That is very interesting. And what I found is there's two things, right? Because you don't know, is it the chicken? Did the chicken come before the egg before the chicken? I don't know. But I found two things. One, is it that they choose the wrong child? Is it that they choose the wrong kid, so they choose the wrong one? They don't have the right perception. You know, they don't have the right perception on who is going to be smarter or more successful. Or is it that they put so much emphasis on this kid that eventually they break? Or is it because they do all these things for this kid and the kid doesn't have to do anything for themselves, so they don't become resourceful, so they're kind of soft, you know, and they don't really work hard enough for the successes, so they don't really get it? You know, is it the fact that, you know, the black sheep is dumb, the black sheep, and so they have this bad rap, and, you know, and they have to fight against the establishment and make, you know, these changes, and then because of that fight and because of having to scrape and scratch for everything they get, they become more successful because of the fight? That's a question. Or were they just automatically smarter to begin with without having that title? And I really actually think that the title and the way that they're treated directly relates to what happens. I don't think it's misperception. I think anybody can be smart, anybody can be hardworking, anybody can not be hardworking. I think you have all of those things going on, and I get it. I understand that. And I think it's definitely how they are raised, and then on top of that, what they feel about themselves. Because a black sheep, it's really hard to get over that feeling. It's really hard to get past that way of thought, or feeling neglected, right? Or feeling not the special kid, not getting all the attention, that sort of thing. It's very hard to not let that kind of creep up on you. It's really hard not to. You know, on the flip side, you know, being the golden child and being given all this attention and all this glory and all this consideration probably feels really good. And that's great. It might make you soft, like, hey, you easily came into all these accolades. You know, the other side of the coin, though, is that the parents probably don't even care or think about the fact of how it makes for a very painful, upsetting childhood for all children involved. Because I don't really think, I think being the golden child is super easier in the process than being the black sheep, because you are getting more attention, you are getting more things, and you are getting all this stuff kind of lavished on you for sure. But I'm sure that you catch the other siblings and their resentment towards you. And that's a really big problem, is that, you know, then you have this war within the siblings, you know, where one sibling's like, you know, hey, this isn't right. And then you have the ones in the middle that they're kind of there. They're not ostracized, but yet they're not really spoken to that much. And then you got the one that's, you know, can't do no wrong. And that's very manipulative with children and very painful, because what do you do about that? How do you change that? How do you augment that? And so growing up in that type of dynamic, you know, you're going to have these issues and problems, you know, within the family, you know, how you feel about your siblings, the resentment and anger that you have, those types of things. And that's very challenging. So let's go back and think about that. For many of you that are listening to the show, maybe you were raised as the black sheep. We call that also the scapegoat, the one that's, you know, there's always something wrong and they blame it on you. Oh, that happened. It's got to be their fault. And that's really challenging growing up, because you end up getting this insecure dynamic. You start feeling, you don't feel confident. It's not a confidence booster. You know, there's a lot of insecurities and fear there as the black sheep, because you haven't been told how great you are. You haven't been told that you're smart, you're intelligent. You know, that hasn't come to pass. And so you either wallow in that, which a lot of people do because it's hard. You know, these are your parents. They're supposed to be helpful. They're supposed to be there for you. Why would my parent not bring me up? Why would my parent not tell me that I'm great or wonderful? I must not be great. I must not be wonderful. Why do they keep putting me down? I must be this way. This must be me. I must be going through this process. Otherwise, they wouldn't be treating me like this. There's got to be a reason, right? Because as kids, we have to make a reason for why this is all happening. We can't just accept the fact that there's something wrong with mom, dad, or both. I mean, we can't, none of us come into, from the womb and jump out and go, oh, yeah, mom's a raging narcissist while dad has, borderline tendency and narcissism with a little hint of histrionic. Nobody sits there and goes, oh, yeah, my parents are completely self absorbed and this is all about them. And I'm just, an extension of their body. And we don't think about that. We think, oh, everything's great, wonderful, wonderfully great. It's the wonderful, most wonderful people. But then over time, things change and augment. And we fall into one of these categories. Or, the sidebar where you're not the scapegoat, you're not the golden child, you're just one of them. You're just one of the kids, and it's interesting. And I find that, the self-esteem is an issue with the black sheep. The self-esteem is an issue because it's hard. It's hard when you're not being, you're not giving any feedback, some positive feedback. That's really challenging.
What you're hearing is Hardie Fiber Cement Siding living up to its reputation as the siding that helps resist weather damage, no matter what Mother Nature throws its way. James Hardie knows how important a reputation is, especially when you're a home builder. That's why Hardie products withstand the elements better than wood-based siding, with styles to match their strength. Because when home builders work with us, we deliver our best so they can look their best. Protect your reputation with exterior products by James Hardie.
And then, with the golden child, they're building up their self-esteem all the time. So in the process, they're constantly being built up, being, made to be feeling better. Oh, you're great. You can do anything. And so they have this, high, theory and thought process about themselves. And that can go far. Some golden child and some golden children and can go really far and be very, very successful. I'm not saying that they can't. Because they get that extra, oomph. They get that extra, hey, you're great, you're wonderful. You get all those pats on the back, the attaboys, the attagirls, constantly there, going to their performances, doing what they need to do. And that can go far to create somebody that's very successful because they have that support, right? On the flip side, that can also make for a problem as well when you're pushing somebody so much. Also it can make people soft too. If you're telling me that I can do all this stuff, why do I work really hard for it? So there's different situations and life situations that take place when it comes to the golden child, the golden one, the chosen one versus the black sheep. And I know one thing that's really sad about it is the separation of the siblings based on this dynamic that the parents have created. Had they not created this type of dynamic, I believe that everybody would be getting along quite well. And if they weren't, it would be based on their own personalities, not the fact that there's been this competitive thing put into the situation that nobody else wanted, but the parents wanted. They created this hierarchy, and now everybody just kind of has to stay in this hierarchy and deal with it. And, the black sheep has to stay low, and the golden child has to stay high, and everybody else in the middle has got to stay in the middle. And you can't, and then you have that resentment and anger toward the siblings, because you don't even know why you have resentment and anger. You just know that somebody gets more than you do or somebody gets less than you do, and you're kind of trying to figure it all out. And I find that, it's like, as we grow up and as we deal with this, a lot of things change. And I've created some short videos that'll be coming out soon if they haven't already come out, as well as a long video, all this on YouTube and also on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and, anywhere that you can find videos. And, we have a TikTok, we put them out there all the time. So it's like, when we grow up and we get out of this family dynamic, as far as living under the roof of this family, things begin to change. Life changes, depending on how much work we put in and what we're focusing on and what we're striving for and what we're working for. All these things can change and augment. And this is very valuable to understand, very valuable to figure out, because if you are the black sheep or you're somebody in the middle in the family dynamic or you're the golden child, this podcast is going to really hit home because there's a lot of information here. Listen to the end for sure. And I'd love to hear some feedback from everybody that listens to the show, letting me know how you feel about that. I'd also like to do a show with, folks live talking about their experience as the golden child, their experience as the black sheep, and how that's impacted their life. So we'll be talking more about that, the impact, and also what happens when things switch. What happens when the black sheep becomes the successful one and the golden child not so much. So stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives. with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. In 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm talking about the black sheep, the golden child, the chosen child. And earlier I was talking about the concept of, how we deal with that if you are one of those or the middle children that doesn't get that much attention, how it impacts your life, the manipulation by the parent dynamic of creating this dynamic in the first place and how it makes us resentful and angry, toward, our, the other folks in our household. And, as you grow up as the black sheep, AKA the scapegoat or, the chosen one, things begin to change. And what I found, like I was saying earlier, is that, is it the perception that they feel like they chose the right one, the one that was going to go far? And, or did they just screw up on their perception, or was all the stress creating, that made them not be as successful? Or was it the fact that they got soft because they did everything for the golden child and the golden child didn't have to do that much, so they didn't really put themselves out there? While as the black sheep, and I'm not saying that every golden child did succeed. That's just not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that every black sheep succeeded as well. But I'm saying that a lot of times with the black sheep, you had to be resourceful. You had to, you had to scrape and scratch and get what you needed to get done. And so sometimes that can make you stronger. Now, not always. I mean, sometimes we get stuck in, feeling sad about the situation, because it's easy to feel sad about the situation. It's your parents. You would hope that they love you and care about you and there for you. And that can be very troubling as well. So definitely looking at it from that perspective. But let's talk a little bit more now about the changes. So there's the growing up period of time. Everybody's moved out of the house. Everybody's been on their own for a certain period of time, gone through school, started, gotten jobs, done all this stuff, maybe started families, all this. What happens, though, when things start fleshing out and the one that was perceived to be the successful one isn't really that successful, and the one that was supposed to be the black sheep becomes very successful? It's interesting because eventually, usually, the parent dynamic changes. Now, not always. Sometimes the golden child is always the golden child, no matter what the golden child has done. So even if the golden child is having issues going in and out of rehab, what have you, nothing against rehab, just going through that process, sometimes parents will stand behind that one that they thought was going to be the golden child the whole time. But sometimes that shifts. Sometimes they'll hold on to the golden child because they don't let go of that. And I think a little bit of it, too, is that, manipulation of being able to manipulate the siblings, because in these types of family dynamics, the scapegoat, the black sheep, and the golden child aren't going to get along. It's very hard because the only way they would get along is to have a conversation, multiple deep conversations, letting each other know that they realize the situation, understand the situation. And if you're in this situation right now, you can take this advice because you can still do it. You can reach out and say, hey, I understand that I'm the golden child and I didn't make myself. This is what was this is what I was created by mom and dad. This was the situation. I didn't want this for me. This is not what I wanted. Or, hey, I realize I am the black sheep and I haven't wanted to be the black sheep. I've been trying and doing all this stuff, but I've been dubbed this and typecast this for a long time, and having those conversations and being able to talk to each other, having that type of conversation. But usually that doesn't happen. Most of the time, because of the water under the bridge, the anger and the resentment, very rarely do those conversations happen. And so that drives a wedge between the family dynamic. You hear the golden child, I don't talk to my brother, or actually, I don't talk to the rest of my family. We don't talk, we don't see eye to eye. And I understand not seeing eye to eye with the parents, but the sad thing is that they created separation for you as well, which is very challenging in its own right. And so that's where it's very interesting to be able to have that conversation and talk about that and put that out there in a positive way, so that we are able to have that conversation and change the direction of that relationship where it's not the parents in charge of their motivation and manipulation. It's you being able to be aware of the fact of what the manipulation was and being able to communicate about that manipulation so that everybody can begin to have a relationship together instead of having this relationship separated by the dynamic that the parents wanted to create. Stay tuned. I have more coming up about what happens when the black sheep becomes the golden child and why that happens in the first place. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. You know it. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I've been talking about the black sheep versus the golden child and what that means, because if you've been in one of those positions, you know how painful that can be on either side, especially when you finally realize what's been happening this whole time. Many of us don't realize what's happening in the family dynamic until much later, and then you realize, oh my gosh, this is what was going on the whole time. And there's a lot of resentment and anger toward the parents, but also toward the siblings, because y'all been kind of divided this whole time, almost in this silent battle with one another. And it would be great if you do realize that you have been in the situation and you realize that you have endured this type of situation or currently in the situation, having the conversations with one another, with each other's siblings, and having that talk and putting it out there can go a long way to helping, save these types of relationships, to helping making these relationships better. And I think that is very powerful in its own nature. So let's talk about this. What happens when the golden child doesn't become as successful as mom and dad had hoped for the golden child? Okay, what happens then? How does that work? And sometimes they'll stand behind the golden child no matter what, but sometimes things begin to change, especially...
What you're hearing is Hardie fiber cement siding living up to its reputation as the siding that helps resist weather damage, no matter what Mother Nature throws its way. James Hardie knows how important a reputation is, especially when you're a home builder. That's why Hardie products withstand the elements better than wood-based siding, with styles to match their strength. Because when home builders work with us, we deliver our best so they can look their best. Protect your reputation with exterior products by James Hardie.
Especially when one of the children that might not have been deemed the black sheep, could have been deemed the black sheep, but somebody that they didn't really think about, one of the middle children, or the black sheep, becomes super successful. Now remember, the whole concept of this is based on the parents wanting children that make them look good. It's not about necessarily the child's success for their own successes. It is actually based on the fact that it's about how do you make me look because you are a spawn. You're my spawn. You're my seed. So therefore, because you are that, I am successful adjacent to you. So I have success adjacent. I'm adjacent to that success, even though it's not mine. It's my kid's, and I can go around saying how amazing my kid is. Look at my kid. He's a Hollywood film star. Look at my kid. He's like #1 at whatever. He's a CEO of da 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 da. Whatever it is. I can go around and say all that, right? And then people go, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. Wow, you have such great kids. Oh, wow. And you're like, oh yeah, it's just, it is what it is. It's all in a day's work, And they begin to move and position themselves around the kid, now grown adult, that is more successful. Very interesting, right? Around the kid who is more successful. And it's hard when that happens because, one, the golden child's, attention begins to wane and change, and they can feel it. The parents aren't there. They're not, they're not all, because a lot of times with the golden child, as you get older, even when the golden child's in their 30s and 40s, the parents that believe that that's the golden child, they go to their house for the holidays, but they miss they don't ever go to the black sheep's house, but all the other kids, they don't go, they make all these, they acquiesce to make sure that they're always there for the golden child. But then things begin to wane. And now, especially if the black sheep And it's not all, you don't always have to be deemed the black sheep or the scapegoat, but you're the one that they didn't really put their bets on. And so this could be very extreme as far as, you were the scapegoat that they blamed you for everything and that sort of thing, which is very challenging and very hurtful. Or you could be the one that they just didn't bet much on. They didn't really think that much of, didn't think very highly of, just wasn't there for you. Definitely didn't go to your recitals or your games or anything like that. Wasn't very supportive of you. And I understand that. And it's hard because eventually that attention that was given to the golden child begins to move in your direction. And as it moves in your direction, it's a very odd feeling because you've never had it before. One, very odd. For some of us, it can feel nice because I've never had this attention from my parents or family. Why, I'm having it now. I might not ask questions because it's so nice because I've never had it. Some of you may get the heebie-jeebies from it because this is scary. Okay, this is a new deal. Why is this happening? What's the deal? What's the game? What's the rub? I got my antenna up. The hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. Not really sure about all this. And then some of you might be just a little apathetic about it all. It's been a long time, lots of water under the bridge. I could care less if they're calling me or not. I'm not going to return the calls. This is BS. But I think that most people fall into those three categories. But at first it can feel really good because all of a sudden it's like, wow, they actually care about me. And you don't really think about it. And I'm not trying to make everybody out to be horrible people. And don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to share some knowledge here. But if you, was one that was dismissed quite a bit, and now let's say you have a really great, successful job, maybe you're making a lot of money, maybe you have, you're a public figure, maybe you have a great marriage and beautiful kids and all this stuff. And so they're going to want to get behind that. They're going to want to get a part of that. They're going to want to be a part of that. This is going to be a big deal for them. And so in that process, they're giving you all this attention, and you have to kind of look at that and analyze, do I feel comfortable with this one? Also, are we ever going to talk about the elephant in the room? Eventually at some point in these situations, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. I think you would want to just get your feelings and truth out about the whole situation, because there is quite a bit of an elephant in the room in the fact that you were kind of shoved off to the side, or, that, you weren't really focused on while someone else was. And now that one that was being focused on hasn't made enough money, might not be able to take care of the parents in their old age. All these types of things, all of a sudden they've moved their gaze to somebody that can. To somebody that has it together, somebody that can make choices, somebody that's organized and successful. And so that is part of the interesting process of what happens, transforms and transcends throughout this process of the change when the black sheep becomes the golden child. And that could be hard for the golden child because you've had all this attention for so long. Some of you might say, hey, thank God the spotlight's off me after all these years. They put me through all this hell. And then, and it's interesting because again, it goes back to what makes this parent feel better about themselves. It's not about you. They're not thinking about, oh, wow, this is great. They're thinking about what makes them feel better about themselves. And I have countless examples from clients that I could go through, countless and countless examples. But it's always interesting because, how they are. Were they a professional football player? Professional actor in Hollywood. And I had a client that, their mother remarried, and the brother, I guess the stepmom's son is a big Hollywood film star, and now all of a sudden my client had the family coming over to her house for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and now they just don't have time. They have to go over to the big Hollywood star's house, and which is great and all, but things have really augmented and changed based on title, based on who they are. And that could be fundamentally really challenging, but it could be also very awakening and it can bring a lot of awareness to our life. And that awareness can be very powerful if we use that awareness for strengthening our life instead of creating more pain and suffering in our life. I also feel like having those communications and opening communication and being honest about our feelings is very powerful. And it's something that we really need to do. It's very powerful. And it's something we need to do in order to talk about our past, to have those conversations about our childhood. And, as, dealing with parents that have possibly some very narcissistic tendencies, well, definitely narcissistic tendencies. It even could be parents with a lot of borderline tendencies. And there could be a mixture as well. In the cluster B dynamic, I always joke around about the three folks sitting in the bus on the same seat. You got three people, sitting in the same seat on the bus. They're tiny. They got to be tiny to fit in that little bus seat. But you got BPD, MPD, and HPD all sitting together. So they're pretty close. So they kind of, they overlap a little bit, right? They overlap a little bit. So you get that kind of dynamic from a parent, right? You're dealing with those signs and symptoms, right? And they create this hierarchy of golden child and folks in middle. And then you got the black sheep because somebody's got to blame. You got to put somebody down, right? And then, you have this. So when that all kind of juxtapositions, when this all kind of gets, thrown on its head, it's a very interesting awareness piece that we all go through, that we all have to deal with. And then how do we accept that? How do we create boundaries? How do we begin to realize and see what's really happening? Because I think also it's nice to be wanted. It's nice to be looked upon. It's nice to be admired. It's nice. Those are nice things to have. However, we have to see the truth, and we have to see what we've gone through and what we've experienced in the past and what we're willing and not willing to go through right now and in our current life. And that's what's so powerful to understand. What are we willing to and not willing to deal with in our life? And that can be very powerful to us and very powerful information. And how do we create these boundaries? How do we create the boundaries in our life with these folks and be able to put down, and the thing that you can't really create boundaries until you've actually had conversations, speaking in a positive way, speaking about our truth, putting it out there. How do we do that? It's about bringing up, how we felt, but it has to be in a non-accusatory way to be able to get the point across and get other people to listen to us in the process. However, sometimes that's easier said than done. And so, when we're dealing with this change, whether you're the golden child now kind of no longer on that pedestal, or now you're the, we're the black sheep or kind of the middle kid that, was kind of somewhat neglected. And now you have the spotlight on you. How do you deal with that new interest? How do you deal with that situation? But also, how do you put out your truth? And also understanding that this whole dynamic was created by your parents, whether it was your mother, your father, or both, or whoever raised you, was created by this. This dynamic was created by them. It wasn't created by you. It wasn't created by your siblings. And so being able to understand that you did nothing wrong to aid and abet in this. Even if you're the golden child, it's not like you made yourself the golden child. It's just not the way it works. Okay. And if you're the black sheep, it's not like you did something to become the black sheep. Usually it's just kind of an automatic thing that they figure out and they define and they go by that. And they decide to operate from that position. And that's always very sad because it's kind of like arbitrary. And then it's just based on their perception, which I think perception is always skewed. Most of the time perception is very skewed because it's based on what we think we know or past experiences, a limited knowledge base, and assumptions. And assumptions really don't get us anywhere at all. Anytime you bet anything on assumptions, you're probably not betting on the right deal. So it's these things that we have to think of and acknowledge in the process. So really thinking about that, and if you have been the black sheep forever, this is a painful place to be at. And many black sheep that never become the golden child suffer because they're always pretty much blamed, or they're not looked at or respected. And in those situations, when we deal with that, it's about having those conversations. And then if they're falling on deaf ears, it's about, dividing ourselves and doing what we have to do to safeguard ourselves and being able to see, that our value isn't dependent on what they think our value is dependent on. We don't depend on them to define our value, even though they are our parents. And that's what's so hard, is that's where the rub is that they're our parents. They're supposed to be comforting and helpful to us, but yet they've done this to us. And this can be such a real problem because we actually believe that they're there for us and helpful, and they're not. And that's where, things kind of fall apart because it's hard to see our parents as not being helpful. Like when we come out of the womb, it's not like we automatically know that these people have, psychological issues and hangups and various things. It's, you wish that they wouldn't have had children. You wish you would have gone into a family where there was just, just a better dynamic, and having that kind of that positive environment and feedback by people that, at the very worst is codependent in nature, or helicopter parents, but not like this. And so unfortunately we don't get to pick our parents, and we don't get to, maybe we did actually, but in this lifetime, we don't remember picking them for whatever reason we picked them for, maybe to make our life hard. And we have to overcome these challenges and pains in our life based on our childhood and see how successful we become. Maybe, I believe that sometimes the most challenging of childhood is based on the strongest of souls coming into this environment. So we got to think about that. So when I return, I'll be talking more about this, about the golden child, the black sheep, the scapegoat, but better yet, the dynamic, and how do we move forward in our own life? How do we let this go? How do we still communicate and have conversations and still somewhat there, but separate ourselves from any more pain and suffering and be able to see the real reasons for these actions by these people? Because once we can see it, we can't unsee it. Once we see why people do what they do, yes, you can lie to yourself, you can do all these things, but you can't really unsee it. And I think it's very powerful once we see it to understand motivation. Once we understand motivation, doesn't make it right, but we know why somebody did it. Then we know that we're the victim here. Even if you're the golden child or the black sheep, you are the victim because it wasn't your choice. I don't think any golden children wanted to be this person where everybody else hated them in the family. I just don't think that they signed up for that. And I know that the black sheep didn't sign up for that. So we have to think about it from that perspective. If you haven't already, check out the new updated website, www.ashleyburgess.com. Ashley, BERGES.com. Ashley, ASHLEY, the original spelling, BERGES. Check out the new website. It's been renovated, and set up a coaching session today. You can actually set up your coaching session right online, and you can do it from the ease of your own home. So stay tuned. New videos up on YouTube, Facebook, and all social medias every week. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess. We'll be right back. We'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Whether you're the black sheep, somebody, one of the siblings in the middle, or the golden child being raised by the family dynamic, it's being able to see the situation, understand clearly why this was created, and then understanding the fact that you are a victim of the situation, but also not victimizing ourselves, but overcoming, putting boundaries, and being able to be honest about the situation and moving forward. And I find that it's like we have to remove the need to be accepted or admired by our parents. We have to just remove that from the situation. And if we're able to remove that from the situation, we can move forward within our lives. It's so powerful. And we have to work on that by seeing our own value, by creating our own direction, by creating our boundaries with these folks, by believing in ourselves, by working on that belief. That's a big deal, by working on that belief. And as we work on that belief and we see our value within, it's so powerful to really drive that home. It's very powerful to drive that home and to really focus on that direction. And as you go from here forth, whether you're the black sheep still, it's like taking, having those conversations. If that hasn't worked, okay. If it has worked, you can change the dynamic between the family. If it hasn't worked, putting up those boundaries, working to be better in your own family dynamic, where, when you've had kids, and really making sure that, you've been responsible about that, really looking at your value and really bringing up those kids in an equal manner. The golden child, the same thing. It's like being able to focus and changing the problems from yesterday, getting rid of those problems, not bringing them into your current life, not following the status quo of the family dynamic is so powerful. Not following that family dynamic pattern. And letting go of their responsibilities and the psychological disorder type things that create these realities. Because like I was saying, when you're dealing with family, mother and father, or mother or father who are extremely narcissistic and very self-centered, and it's all about them, they're going to create this type of structure in the family dynamic. And it's going to create negativity, and it's not worth it because everybody's the victim in this except for them. And so if things have changed and you have become the golden child, really look at that. Is this something that I really want, or do I want to really step out of this? It might feel good for a little while, but also it's like, I've been wanting this type of attention for a long time and I haven't gotten it. And now I'm getting it. Do I really want it? Is this real though, too? Or is this based on the fact of what they think that I can do or help them with in the future? As well as looking at the anger and animosity and resentment that we have toward our other family members. Was a lot of that predicated by the dynamic that was created by the parents. Can I have a conversation with my sister or brother now and see if we can open the line of communication, share what I know about, the scapegoat, the black sheep, the folks in the center, the ones that are not really looked at, as well as the golden child? Can we have that conversation where I show that I'm not judging the situation on them, but I'm showing how I understand the dynamic, and let's talk about the dynamic freely and try to create a relationship as adults now in a new realm, a new way of thinking, which is very valuable and can go a long way, because even if you haven't been close growing up because of this, you can create closer relationships that can actually change your life forever in a very positive way. And I think that anytime we have the ability to do that, let's do it. And then if you try and it falls on deaf ears, and you try again and it falls on deaf ears, okay. But I think you got to give it a good try, because, you don't want to feel like, oh, if I would have just tried harder, it would have worked out. But we also don't want to be codependent and think it all rests on us, because it doesn't rest on us. We don't want to take all the blame, but yet we do want to try to put ourselves out there to make things right. I think just because it should matter to us to some degree, just to put it out there. And so if you're dealing with either one of these, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear some feedback from you if you want to reach out to me. I also would like to do a show with, real life, black sheep, as well as real life golden children, and having these conversations about how it feels and the dynamic and what you've dealt with growing up and through that as far as into your adulthood as well. You can go on AshleyBurgess.com, click on the contact page and send me a message. You could also go to YouTube, go to Life Coach Ashley Burgess. There's a contact there, and send me a message via email there as well. I'd love to hear some feedback from you. Or you can go to Instagram, go to @AshleyBurgess, and send me a direct message. I hope that this show has helped and has inspired you to have those conversations, to be aware of these types of boundaries that need to be created, to know why the situation took place, in the very beginning, and how to really go from there and understand that situation, because knowledge is power. And also, once we take away, the power that the parents have over us, we gain back our power, and we also put it within ourselves to grow ourselves, not based on how they feel about us or how they felt about us, but based on how and what we've created for ourselves, and really focusing on that value. And that's what's so important. Stay tuned. I'll have another show for you up in the next few days. Check out the latest videos on YouTube and Facebook and all of their social medias. And I hope that this content is connecting with you. Please share with family and friends and anybody that you know needs to hear this message. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. Well, I'll be back this time. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.